Psalm 63. Your Bible probably has a like a note or a heading at the top of this psalm. It says, a psalm of David regarding a time when David was in the wilderness of Judah. The time I know of when David was in the wilderness of Judah was when Saul was pursuing him. And Saul didn't want to, just catch up and give him a hug. Saul intended to kill him. So, with that in mind, realizing that the stress and pressure on David during this time was, it was pretty extreme. We talked about this already. Oh God, you are my God. I earnestly search for you. My soul thirsts for you. My whole body longs for you in this parched and weary land where there is no water. Now, we cannot literally, physically thirst for God. This is not about our body. This is very symbolic, obviously. We talked about thirsting for God, searching for God, earnestly searching for God, not casually. And I'll say it again, my observation is not many Christians search earnestly for God. Unfortunately, we're fairly casual about that. Well, we're not very different from people through the ages. There have always been more folks who are casual about their seeking God than earnest. Well, okay, my soul thirsts for you. If you've had a season, even a day or a portion of a day, where your soul just felt dehydrated, you can relate to what David writes here. My soul thirsts for you. Yesterday we took our dear friends Danny and Anita and drove through Red Rock Canyon on the loop. The beauty there is very unique and profound for me. And every time so far that I've driven the loop, my soul is sometimes only a little bit, but sometimes quite restored and refreshed. And it's as though it drinks in the beauty and the majesty of those rocks. I often, when I drive through, I look up and I see the mountains. I see the rocks and stones and the formations, and I think, God, you didn't have to do this. I don't know. I'm not a scientist, obviously, but I have stayed in a Holiday Inn Express. But I don't know that there is some important and strategic function of those amazing formations. Why did you do that? I wonder. And I think, I never hear voices, so it's just in my mind, I think God would say, well, Stevie boy, I did it for you. Okay. Then David continues to carry this metaphor, this symbolism. My whole body longs for you in this parched and weary land where there is no water. Yeah, excuse me. Because we live in Las Vegas, I live in a land that is parched and weary. You get out away from the city in any direction, and you realize, well, this is a desert after all. The land is parched and weary, and if you've gone from Las Vegas to anywhere and driven from the south to get to Las Vegas, you had to drive past Lake Mead. And you realize we got a water problem here, because that lake has never been as low. We live in a parched and weary land where there is no water. Now, David the wilderness of Judea or Judah is quite, it's very similar to where I live here. It is parched and weary land. Water is a very scarce commodity. But I think this has a double meaning. It is the physical world that David's dealing with as he writes, and it is the spiritual aspect. When you, in your spirit, in your soul, feel that the world around you is parched and weary and there's no water, when you sense that you are in a spiritual desert, if you've ever had that happen, I would say, you know what David's talking about. I don't like the seasons where I have been in this spiritual desert, the desert of the soul. I don't enjoy it. And yet, it seems trite as I'm, preparing to say it out loud, but growth in my life virtually always happens through the stress of things like spiritual desert. When I'm in the spiritual desert, it takes a while sometimes because I'm so hard-headed, but eventually I get the truth reestablished in my mind. I am not in charge here. I don't have the resources to make water appear, to change this barren land. My job is not to change that, but to continue through it. If you are going through a season of spiritual desert, you suit yourself. If you want to keep punching against it and trying to change it, I'd say knock yourself out. I think you're probably going to find more value and success by learning how, teaching yourself, letting the Holy Spirit teach you to go through. I'd most of the time much rather go around or go over, but I don't think I've ever had a time where I could do that when it was a season of spiritual desert. Okay. Then David says, I've seen you in the sanctuary and gazed upon your power and glory. Okay, several questions here. First of all, you have seen him? Man, I never have. I've seen his expression, like I was saying, at Red Rock Canyon yesterday. I saw his expression of who he is and how he is, and it is overwhelming. But I didn't see him. I can think of dozens of ways and times that I have seen God expressing himself, seen evidence for him. Yes, I see it almost everywhere. But that's not the same thing as I have seen you in your sanctuary and gazed upon your power and glory. Okay. I know this probably just due to my immaturity and shortcoming, but I can't relate. I've never been able to see him. Okay, so how was that? The second question, what sanctuary are you talking about? When David wrote this, there was no temple. The Ark of the Covenant was in possession of Israel. Saul was the king, who seemed to have limited interest in the law of God to his design. The only sanctuary spiritually here that I can think of would be the tabernacle. Perhaps David is referring to a time when he was at the tabernacle. He would not have been able to go into the holy place, which was, there was the courtyard, then there was the holy place, and then there was the Holy of Holies, and there was only one piece of furniture in the Holy of Holies. That was the Ark of the Covenant. David would not have been able to get past the courtyard. And yet, he says that I have seen you in your sanctuary. Is it possible? Which, when I ask that question, I'm thinking it probably is. That what David is referring to here is the fact that his spirit perceived God in a unique, glorious, powerful way, and not necessarily in the physical sanctuary of the tabernacle, but in that quiet, for most people, secret place in his own heart. So, I don't know. He says he gazed on God's power and his glory. I've told you this already. Yesterday, I gazed on God's power and glory. There are other times. I have 4 grandkids, and the first time, and not just the first time, that I held each one of those, I gazed upon the power and the glory of God. This was true when I held each one of our 3 daughters. Your ability to see God has a direct relationship into your desire to see him. There's a lot of people who will sing the song, oh God, when they're in church, oh God, come into this place. We only want we just want to hear from you, to see you. And I don't think they want that. That would be too overwhelming for most of us. And I think, again, we're back to, I think most of us have this casual desire to encounter God. But everybody in the Bible who encountered God in this kind of vivid, overpowering way, there's nothing casual about that. So, The question is, for me, how earnestly do I want to see him? How important is that? Now, by the way, probably already know this, but if you're going to see him, one of the things that has to happen is that you quit looking at all of the other distractions. And that's not easy in a world that is at your fingertips. Okay, I've blown way past my time. I'll see you next time on Stevie Boy. Soak Care with Stevie Boy.